Your life as a werewolf. Alright, let's set the scene. You drop into the snowy dragon-infested province of Skyrim and immediately set your sights on the towering city of Whiterun to kickstart your grand adventure. Now, your average run-of-the-mill players walk through those giant wooden doors with basic dreams of casting fireball spells and wearing shiny armor to save the world. Not you. You possess a deeply specific, borderline unhinged desire to become a giant furry monster that aggressively eats bandit hearts. Your entire master game plan revolves around joining the local warrior frat house known as the Companions, just to acquire their highly secretive and incredibly potent beast blood. You are absolutely ready to happily embrace the life of a feral predator roaming the frozen wilderness, with an insatiable hunger for raw meat and absolute chaos. Playing as a giant angry dog remains the absolute peak of the Skyrim experience. You early jog up the steps to the massive maid hall called Jorvaskr to meet the legendary warriors who secretly harbor this magical canine gift. You speak with the wise old boomer leader, Kodlak Whitemane, and happily accept his offer to join this esteemed group of fighters. You spend your early days running basic intern errands and beating up random thugs in taverns just to prove your worth to the inner circle. But your dedication pays off immensely when you travel to a dusty old ruin alongside the brooding warrior, Farkas, for your first real test. You watch in pure amazement as Farkas literally transforms into a towering werewolf to completely decimate a group of hostile mercenaries in a matter of seconds. You realize right then and there that acquiring this magnificent animal power is the absolute defining goal for your entire playthrough. You patiently wait for the sun to go down so you can meet the grizzled veteran, Skjor, by the glowing fires of Skyforge. He leads you into a hidden subterranean chamber known as the Underforge, where the true magic of the Companions take place in absolute secrecy. You stand before a massive stone basin and watch with pure joy as Ayla the Huntress slices her own arm to fill the bowl with glowing beast blood. You enthusiastically chug this magical liquid and immediately feel the primal energy surging through your veins as your squishy human body shifts into a towering wall of muscle and fur. You wake up several hours later standing in the middle of the wilderness, leaving all your carefully crafted armor and clothing miles away. You find the situation incredibly hilarious as you realize your first official act as an apex predator involved running completely bare butt into the forest to chase wild deer. Embracing this feral lifestyle requires a deep understanding of the unique mechanics that govern your newfound animalistic body. You activate your beast form power and fully dedicate yourself to utilizing your massive razor-sharp claws to solve literally all your problems. You rely entirely on your incredible physical strength to tear through heavily armored bandits and giant frostbite spiders with absolute ease. You quickly discover the absolute joy of using your sprinting power attack to launch unsuspecting enemies completely across the room like floppy ragdolls. You truly appreciate the sheer comedic value of watching a heavily armored bandit chief fly through the air after receiving a devastating uppercut from a giant wolf. Sustaining this magnificent form requires you to constantly feast on the fallen bodies of your enemies to extend your transformation timer and heal your wounds. You happily gorge yourself on the hearts of every single hostile NPC you encounter to keep your health bar completely full during massive battles. You start viewing every single bandit camp and necromancer hideout as a highly convenient all-you-can-eat buffet designed specifically to keep your fury rampage going for hours. You completely bypass the concept of picking locks and looting treasure chests because a true apex predator focuses entirely on finding the next fresh meal. We totally respect a gamer who prioritizes a high-protein diet and completely bypasses collecting basic iron swords. Your quest for ultimate canine dominance naturally leads you to the gloomy southern town of Folkreath to locate a very special magical artifact. You casually stroll into the damp town jail, to have a friendly chat with a distressed prisoner named Sinding, who just so happens to share your specific furry condition. You gladly accept his quest to hunt down a majestic white stag in the nearby forest to gain the favor of the Daedric prince, Hercene. You enthusiastically track this glowing animal through the trees and claim your prize to summon the spirit of the legendary hunting god himself. You happily agree to enter a beautiful hidden sanctuary called Bloated Man's Grotto to participate in a glorious battle royale alongside fellow fierce warriors. You locate Sending hiding in the lush greenery of the grotto and quickly decide to team up with him to absolutely annihilate the surrounding hunters. You slice through the opposition with your massive claws and proudly claim the legendary Ring of Hercene as your ultimate reward for showing loyalty to a fellow wolf. This incredible piece of jewelry grants you the magnificent ability to transform into your beast form an unlimited amount of times every single day. You equip this shiny ring with immense pride and fully embrace the freedom of turning into a massive monster whenever the mood strikes you. Having the power to instantly become a giant wolf during a minor traffic dispute with a guard creates the truly magical feeling. Thanks to the Dawngar expansion, you eventually discover a massive constellation of magical stars inside your mind that represents the dedicated wolf perk tree. You eagerly devour the hearts of countless enemies to earn valuable perk points and unlock devastating new abilities for your furry alter ego. You immediately dump your hard-earned points into the bestial strength perk to drastically multiply the physical damage of your ferocious claw swipes. You truly appreciate how this massive damage boost allows you to effortlessly shred through the thick scales of ancient dragons and the heavy armor of dwarven centurions. You also grab the Animal Vigor perk to grant yourself a colossal surplus of health and stamina for those incredibly long and exhausting dungeon brawls. You greatly enhance your dietary habits by unlocking the Gorging perk to double the amount of health you receive from every single meal. You combine this wonderful healing boost with a Savage Feeding perk to completely expand your culinary options across the entire continent. You happily realize that you can now feast on the remains of wild animals and terrifying monsters to keep your transformation going indefinitely. You spend hours running through the snowy plains of Whiterun, just munching on giant mud crabs and angry bears to maintain your glorious beast form. Turning the local wildlife population into your personal snack supply signifies the true mark of a successful apex predator. Your deep connection to the beast blood prompts you to assist Ayla the Huntress in locating the sacred totems of Hercene scattered across the province. You gladly accompany your fierce companion into dangerous Draugr ruins to retrieve these ancient artifacts and place them in the subterranean Underforge. You pray to the Totem of Brotherhood to gain the magnificent ability to summon two glowing spirit wolves to fight by your side during these intense battles. You completely adore having a tiny pack of ghostly doggos following you around and distracting heavily armed bandits while you prepare a devastating power attack. You eventually upgrade the summoning ability through your perk tree to call forth actual physical werewolves to aid you in your bloody crusade. You run into a massive forest-going encampment with your furry bros and completely overwhelm the magical shamans with an avalanche of fangs and claws. You also acquire the Totem of Terror to unleash a spine-chilling howl that forces your enemies to drop their weapons and run away in absolute panic. You find immense satisfaction in watching brave city guards and arrogant mercenaries flee for their lives the moment you let out a deafening roar. You casually jog behind these terrified victims and swipe them into the stratosphere with your heavy attacks to clear out entire fortresses with absolute ease. You also utilize the Totem of the Predator to grant yourself highly advanced thermal vision that highlights every living creature in your immediate vicinity. You use this glowing aura to perfectly track hidden assassins and sneaky vampires through the deepest caves and the thickest forests. You meticulously plan your ambushes by watching the glowing red outlines of your prey through solid stone walls before smashing through the door like a furry wrecking ball. Having built-in radar wall hacks makes playing hide and seek with bandits an incredibly one-sided and deeply entertaining game. Of course, her peaceful life of eating hearts and howling at the moon gets rudely interrupted by a heavily armed faction of werewolf hunters known as the Silver Hand. Instead of being intimidated, you view these arrogant mercenaries as a highly convenient delivery service, bringing fresh snacks and valuable combat XP directly to your doorstep. You team up with the surviving members of the Companions to launch a massive revenge campaign to completely eradicate these annoying hunters across all their hidden strongholds. You eagerly sprint toward the formidable fortress of Gallows Rock to dismantle their entire operation and avenge the fallen members of your beloved warrior family. You smash through the wooden barricades of the fortress and unleash your absolute fury upon every single hand member foolish enough to stand in your way. You rely heavily on your terrifying howl to scatter their archers while you focus your attention on the heavily armored leaders wielding giant silver swords. You completely ignore the burning pain of their weapons and push through the damage using your massive health pool and your rapid feeding schedule. You eventually corner their brutal leader, Krev the Skinner, in a large circular room filled with gruesome trophies. You deliver a final devastating uppercut to this arrogant hunter and proudly claim the fortress as a glorious victory for your furry brethren. You eventually take your canine talents out into the open world to test your raw physical power by fighting the legendary dragon soaring through the skies. You patiently wait for these giant winged lizards to land in the dirt before rushing in to deliver a flurry of lightning-fast claw swipes to their scaly faces. You perfectly time your heavy attacks to stagger the massive beasts and interrupt their deadly fire breath with sheer brute force. You find it incredibly amusing that a giant mythical dragon can be completely bullied into submission by a very angry dog throwing wild haymakers. You proudly stand over the skeletal remains of the dragon and absorb its magical soul while letting out a triumphant howl to claim your absolute dominance. You also decide to challenge the towering giants roaming the volcanic tundras to see who possesses the absolute supreme physical strike in the entire game. You completely dodge their massive clubs and weave through their slow attacks to land rapid strikes on their vulnerable kneecaps. You eventually build up enough momentum to execute a spectacular cinematic finishing move where you climb onto the giant and bring them crashing down to the earth. You truly appreciate the sheer cinematic beauty of watching your furry character absolutely demolish a massive creature with pure wrestling moves. We fully endorse using professional wrestling techniques to establish your dominance over the local giant population. Your glorious adventures in human form often result in some highly entertaining interactions with the local city guards who somehow sense your hidden canine nature. You chuckle quietly to yourself as the heavily armored guards constantly complain about a phantom wet dog smell following you around the marketplace. You find it absolutely hilarious when they casually ask if you have fur growing out of your ears while you just stand there trying to sell some potions. You completely embrace these funny little comments as a wonderful reminder of the incredible secret power you keep hidden under your normal clothes. Your journey with the companions eventually forces you to make a massive decision regarding the permanence of your magical beast blood. You listen to the ghostly spirit of Kodlak Whitemane, ask for your assistance in finding a cure so he can enter the glorious warrior afterlife of Sovngarde. You bravely travel to a dark cave to hunt down the terrifying Glenmoril witches and claim their magical heads to use in a powerful cleansing ritual. You toss a witch head into the blue flames of Isgramor's tomb to cure Kodlak and secure his rightful place in the legendary Mead Hall. But then you hold on to the remaining witch heads and face a deeply personal choice regarding your own physical future in this magical world. You look deep into your heart and realize that you absolutely love the thrill of the hunt. and the raw power of the beast form entirely too much to give it up. You gladly throw the concept of a cure straight into the nearest river and vow to remain a loyal servant of her scene for the rest of your digital life. You eagerly look forward to spending your eventual afterlife running through the infinite forests of the hunting grounds alongside your fierce Daedric master. Choosing to be a giant immortal wolf forever is obviously the absolute perfect way to play this video game. You decide to expand your murderous horizons by joining the secretive Dark Brotherhood and introducing your furry talents to the world of professional assassinations. You quickly discover that turning into a massive roaring beast serves as a highly effective method to eliminate your targets in the middle of a crowded city street. You happily accept the massive bounties placed on your head because you know the town guards face a completely impossible challenge trying to catch a sprinting werewolf. You treat every single assassination contract as a wonderful excuse to practice your high-speed parkour skills across the wooden rooftops of Riften and Solitude. You wait for the perfect moment to drop down from the shadows and completely flatten your target with a massive plunging attack that leaves the entire town in absolute shock. You find immense joy in using your terrifying presence to clear out heavily fortified bandit camps for the various jarls of the province. You proudly walk up to the front gates of a massive stone fort and initiate your transformation sequence right in front of the confused archers. You use your incredible jumping ability to scale the defensive walls and completely bypass their carefully placed traps and locked wooden doors. You systematically clear out every single courtyard and interior room by tossing heavily armed thugs off the high stone bridges and into the rushing rivers below. You truly appreciate how your beast form turns a slow and methodical dungeon crawl into a high-octane action movie filled with flying bodies and constant roaring. Your incredible physical prowess naturally draws the attention of the military factions fighting a massive civil war across the snowy borders of the province. You happily enlist in the Grand Army and bring your unique brand of canine warfare to the massive fortress sieges happening all over the map. You stand alongside your fellow soldiers and wait for the wooden barricades to break before unleashing your beast form and charging directly into the enemy ranks. You serve as a living battery ram to completely shatter the defensive lines and create massive openings for your allies to push through the courtyard. You find it incredibly satisfying to watch dozens of enemy soldiers drop their shields and scatter in pure terror the moment they see a giant wolf leading the charge. You utilize your massive stamina pool to sprint back and forth across the battlefield to intercept enemy reinforcements and protect your vulnerable archers. You perform spectacular running power attacks to send heavily armored captains flying through the air and crashing into their own defensive structures. You completely dominate the entire war effort by turning every major battle into a personal feeding frenzy that leaves the enemy generals completely baffled and defeated. You proudly stand amidst the ruined fortresses and howl at the sky to celebrate another glorious victory for your chosen military faction. Winning a massive political war by simply eating the entire opposing army proves to be a highly efficient strategy. Your deep devotion to the beast blood naturally creates a massive rivalry with the ancient vampire lords lurking in the dark corners of the province. You gladly accept the challenge of hunting down these arrogant bloodsuckers to prove that the children of Hircine rule the night with absolute authority. You confidently march into their dark and gloomy castles, completely indifferent to their magical traps and their creepy undead thralls. You rely on your sheer physical mass to power through their freezing ice spells and their annoying life-draining magic to close the distance in a matter of seconds. You perfectly execute your devastating combos to completely shred their fancy aristocratic clothing and send them crashing into their own expensive dining tables. You find immense satisfaction in using your beast form to completely bypass their magical illusions and track their movements using your powerful predatory senses. You proudly stand over the defeated vampire lords and feast on their ancient hearts to gain additional perk points for your growing skill tree. You view the entire Dawnguard expansion as a wonderful opportunity to assert your canine dominance over the ancient and deeply arrogant monsters in the entire game, reminding ancient vampires that they simply represent another item on your grand tasting menu creates a truly wonderful feeling. Your boundless hunger eventually drives you deep underground into the massive subterranean glowing mushroom forest known as Blackreach. You completely marvel at the glowing blue flora and the ancient golden architecture while you sprint through the massive caverns searching for fresh prey. You use your incredible speed to chase down the blind palmer creatures hiding in the dark corners of this beautiful and terrifying underground world. You highly enjoy surprising these creepy cave dwellers by ambushing them from the shadows and completely overwhelming their primitive weapons with your massive claws. You also test your raw strength by smashing the massive mechanical guardians patrolling the ancient dwarven cities scattered throughout the cavern. You eagerly charge at the towering dwarven centurions and deliver an infinite barrage of heavy strikes to dent their thick brass armor and expose their glowing steam pipes. You completely bypass the burning steam and the spinning blades to deliver the final crushing blow that turns the ancient robot into a pile of broken scrap metal. You proudly claim the title of the absolute champion in Blackreach by successfully suplexing a giant mechanical monstrosity into the glowing blue dirt, proving that raw organic muscle easily destroys ancient dwarven technology, serves as a highly rewarding scientific experiment. Your grand journey eventually takes you across the freezing ocean to the ash-covered island of Solstheim to discover entirely new environments and challenges. You eagerly hop off the wooden boat and immediately begin scouting the strange landscape for unique creatures to add to your exotic tasting menu. You happily discover a bizarre ecosystem filled with floating niches alongside Aggie ash spawn and terrifying giant bugs known as ash hoppers. You completely embrace the opportunity to unleash your beast form in this weird new land and show the local wildlife exactly who runs the food chain. You enthusiastically sprint across the gray volcanic ash and launch yourself into massive groups of weird mushroom-dwelling bandits to establish your absolute dominance. You carefully track down the elusive glowing werebears roaming the snowy northern peaks of the island to engage in a spectacular clash of giant furry titans. You completely overpower these massive bears with your incredible speed and your highly upgraded perk tree to prove that the wolf stands as the ultimate apex predator. You proudly stand on the massive peak of Solstheim and let out a deafening howl that echoes across the frozen ocean all the way back to the mainland. You also dedicate a massive amount of time to perfecting the exact moment you activate your beast form to maximize your dramatic impact on the world. You learn to trigger your transformation right as you burst through the wooden doors of a crowded tavern to create the ultimate surprise party for the unsuspecting patrons. You truly appreciate the chaotic energy of watching the entire room erupt into absolute panic as you grow massive claws and shatter the surrounding furniture. You use this incredible dramatic flair to complete the infinite radiant quests provided by the companions with a highly entertaining and theatrical style. You happily accept jobs to rescue kidnapped citizens from deep inside treacherous necromancer dungeons filled with glowing magical traps. You walk into the final boss room and instantly transform into your towering alter ego to completely terrify the dark wizards trying to complete their evil rituals. You swiftly dismantle the cultists and carefully escort the frightened citizen back to their home while still absolutely covered in the glorious evidence of your massive victory. You find it incredibly amusing that the rescue townsfolk simply thank you for your help and completely bypass the fact that you just slaughtered an entire dungeon as a giant rabid dog. Your absolute favorite aspect of the werewolf lifestyle involves the deeply hilarious ragdoll physics built into the core engine of this incredible game. You spend hours perfectly lining up your sprinting power attacks to hit enemies at the exact right angle to maximize their airtime. You launch heavily armored orcs off the incredibly high stone bridges of the College of Winterhold and watch them plummet gracefully to the freezing sea of ghosts. You treat the entire province of Skyrim as your personal golf course, where the bandit serves as the golf balls and your massive furry fist acts as the driver. You coordinate your massive uppercuts with a steep mountainous terrain to send tragic travelers rolling endlessly down the snowy slopes of the throat of the world. You find immense joy in following the tumbling bodies all the way down the mountain just to ensure you secure your well-deserved heart snack at the very bottom. You completely master the art of juggling multiple enemies in the air by rapidly switching targets and delivering continuous heavy strikes before they can even touch the ground. Creating your own personal space program using exclusively raw canine muscle presents an incredibly valid way to spend your afternoon. Your deep dive into the mystical lore of Hercene leads you to discover a fascinating alternative path. During your adventure in the Bloated Man's Grotto, you realize that you can choose to turn on Sinding and claim his skin to earn a magnificent piece of magical clothing known as the Savior's Hide. You completely admire the rugged aesthetic of this legendary light armor and appreciate the massive magical resistance it provides to your fragile human form. You happily strut around the snowy cities wearing this highly fashionable piece of divine clothing to showcase your absolute devotion to the Lord of the Hunt. You also spend time collecting other terrifying Daedric artifacts to complement your deeply chaotic and aggressive playstyle during your human hours. You happily wield the legendary mace of Molag Bal to crush the stamina and magicka out of your enemies before you even decide to transform. You perfectly combine the terrifying presence of the ebony male with your innate beast blood to create a stealthy and poisonous warrior of absolute darkness. You fully embrace the role of a heavily armed Daedric champion, who just so happens to occasionally turn into a massive furry wrecking ball when the situation demands extreme violence. Eventually, you reach the absolute peak of your vanilla power and decide to explore the incredible world of player-created modifications to push your beast form to the absolute limit. You eagerly install massive overhauls that introduce entirely new perk trees and deeply complex mechanics to make your furry adventures highly engaging. You truly appreciate how these wonderful additions allow you to level up your physical strength and your movement speed infinitely based on the total number of hearts you consume. You happily transform your character into an unstoppable god of destruction, capable of leaping over entire buildings and throwing horses across the map. You completely fall in love with the enhanced visual effects that make your fur look incredibly realistic, and your glowing eyes pierce through the pitch black nights. You utilize these brilliant community creations to customize your exact fur color and your physical size to perfectly match the specific aesthetic of your chosen character. You proudly roam the forests as a towering snow-white direwolf or a terrifying dark monster covered in glowing red tribal markings. Customizing your giant murder dog to look absolutely fabulous serves as a highly crucial step in the modern gaming experience.